When you look at that squad, even things off the pitch, everything that surrounds the club. Callum McGregor is the one thing you don't need to worry about. And I mean, he's 32 years old, but we're talking about a guy here that's 36, 37, and you're worried that his legs are gone. I mean, 32 is nothing in this day and age. And if Callum McGregor's form's dipped, and I listen to Celtic fans and see comments, and that seems to be the general view that he's not been as good and he's been off it. I would put that down to what's round about him, and that's because it's only a year, 18 months to 2 years you're watching Callum McGregor at the highest level in Champions League games compete with the very best. And Celtic were strong at that time. They had a really good kind of midfield around him. I think of some of those European nights when he's got Hatate and Engels beside him, and they're on form. Even going back to when it was Matt O'Reilly, even going back further when it was a Scott Brown or whatever. I mean, top level performances against top level teams. He is not the issue at Celtic in terms of their current form or the state they're in this title race. And as Jacko touched on, I think he's suffering because I think others round about him have really struggled to step up to the plate, and I actually feel sorry for him in that sense, because he'd never admit it publicly, but you think of the teams that Callum McGregor's been involved in, he must look around that dressing room at the moment at the quality around him. And I'm talking about guys that we've discussed on here before, like your Balaquishas and Adamus and Chvancharas and people like that, just not at the level I don't think that Callum McGregor's been used to at Celtic, and I can only assume that his game is suffering as a result of that. I mean, he can't carry that team on his own. You think even somebody like Maeda, who's been nowhere near his best this season, and where he's been in terms of his performances in recent years. So I just don't get the criticism of Callum McGregor. I mean, can you imagine he wasn't there? Where they'd be in terms of the league and the title race? So
I agree with Scott as well.
Right.
I think as well, the fact he's clearly carrying injury, but he's prepared to go back into it, but he knows what's on the line here. Mm-hmm. And we were discussing last night, if Callum McGregor thought he wasn't fit enough to give Martin O'Neill a good 60, 70 minutes, he's professional enough. He's the immaculate professional. He wouldn't put himself in that position. He is clearly, Martin O'Neill clearly wants him to go out on the pitch and empty the tank for him to try and help win games. And as Scott Brown says, Callum McGregor's not a selfish guy. He will put the club first, and he's prepared to put himself at risk of further injury in order to try and keep this thing on track. I'm just surprised there's a debate about it, and I know there was stuff circling about in social media, and it was one clip from the game at the weekend where he gets the ball and he's going over the halfway line, and there is a forward pass on, and he turns back and keeps possession and gives it to the fullback rather than take the forward pass. And people are using that as a sort of club to beat him over the head with. Callum McGregor's entire Celtic career has been spent on keeping the ball, possession-based game, not making, not giving the ball away with rash passes, choosing the right pass at the right time if he's going forward. That's what his game's all about. There's nothing changed here. Other than the fact that Martin O'Neill's revealed that he is carrying a bit of an injury. But I say good on him, because there are too many players that have gone missing this season for Celtic. That might sound a bit harsh, because I know that there have been some really bad injury issues. But I look at some of the guys, I look at some of the things that have happened around the club this year, and you wonder, how come? What is going on with the medical department? What's going on with these guys? Why have they been missing in action for so long? And then you've got a guy who has always seen himself as, a guy that leads from the front. He's prepared to put his body in a line. Maybe he's expecting that one or two of his teammates might have been, equally prepared to go that extra mile. And that's certainly the thrust of the conversation with Scott Brown, and plus a bit more in tomorrow's paper, yeah.
What's fascinating, Jack, was what do you think happens at the end of the season? I know I'm jumping ahead into the future. We've got a title race to go. But in terms of Callum McGregor at the end of the season, we've spoken on here about, I've talked on here about the massive revamp Celtic are going to have. No, surely any new manager coming in, whether it's Martin O'Neill or somebody fresh coming in, I think when you've got that size of rebuild, you need people there that know
continuity. You absolutely need it. Yeah.
What if somebody there? And yet I keep hearing people saying, "No, his time's up." No, is there going to be
It's a nonsense.
is there going to be
Funnily enough,
Rodgers to go to Saudi? Is he going to get something like that going to come up that might tempt him away? Does Callum McGregor need to look at the club and think, well, where are we going here? Who is the next manager? Will there be further investment? It's going to be fascinating.
Possibly, Scott. But given the way he feels about the club, I think he'll need to get dragged out of the place by wild horses. I think that he's all in. And I also think that's part of the reason that I wanted to speak to Scott Brown about it, because there are so many similarities. When Brendan Rodgers came into Celtic, at that time Scott Brown was captain and people were writing him off. He was finished. He was only in his early 30s at that point. But that was the chat among Celtic supporters. Well, neither do captain. Brownie's legs have gone. That was all you heard at the time. And he had come back from a really bad injury under Ronnie Dyler, hadn't he? But look where his career went at that point in his career.
He played the best football his career from then on.
It went stratospheric from that point. So are you honestly prepared to look at Callum McGregor and write that off just now? That sounds like madness to me. There is another interesting point in all of this, as you're just saying. What is the future for the manager? And Scott Brown is of the opinion that he says, I think the exact quote was that
well, I've got it.
He's not a spring chicken anymore, Martin O'Neill. But if Celtic could talk him into signing for another year, he thinks that would be a really positive move for the club. I'm not so sure about that, I have to be honest, and I've voiced my concerns about that. I just think if Celtic are serious and want to be seen as being serious, they have to have a much bigger, more defined plan for what the future looks like than asking a 74-year-old guy to stay on till he's 75. That for me isn't an answer at all. It could well be there's an alternative role for Martin O'Neill. Maybe he's looking at the chairman's situation, because that's only filled on an interim basis. Maybe that might be an elegant solution to the whole thing, but I just don't think it's feasible to say to Martin O'Neill at the age of 74, right, can you go again next season? What does that tell you about future planning? No. I don't think it looks good, and I think given the mess that the Celtic board have made of everything over the last 18 months, then it's probably about time that they started laying down some foundations that the supporters could connect with and think, oh yeah, right, I see the way forward. The way forward can't be a 74-year-old guy staying in the dugout until he's 75. That can't be it.
See whether or not it's right. Do you guys think he would stay on if he was asked?
I don't think so, Dan. I just listening to Martin O'Neill, even in recent weeks, he's been talking about the new manager coming in and the new guy coming in. I don't think he's thinking for a second he'll be Celtic manager next season. And I totally agree with Jacko. I mean, that cannot, with all due respect to Martin O'Neill, a legendary manager, what a job he's done in both of these spells coming back as interim. But is that really where Celtic are going now? Is that the future? Is that the plan for the next few years? Let's try and get Martin O'Neill for another year. We'll try and squeeze another title bid. I don't see it. And listen, see after the weekend result, even beating St Mirren, you were even starting to hear wee kind of murmurs of criticism towards Martin O'Neill for Celtic fans. No, it wasn't great to watch. It was a bit boring. Didn't kick on the second half. St Mirren loads of possession. So there's even wee bits of criticism coming for him. Even Martin O'Neill's getting a wee bit of flack now. Can you imagine if they did persuade him to stay on next season and it doesn't start well? I mean, it could begin to unravel for him, and you wouldn't like to see. No, you wouldn't like to see that kind of iconic figure at the club, ending on a real sour note. So I'd be amazed if Martin O'Neill's in charge of Celtic next season. I mean, that just can't happen.
I tell you what makes that even a more difficult scenario, Scott, is that if you're looking at the way Celtic have conducted their business over the previous transfer windows, and it's not been impressive. And then just the other week, Martin O'Neill was on Easter Monday down at Preston North End, effectively scouting for players.
Right.
So, look, if somebody was to sit Martin O'Neill down and say, look, here's a list of players we're going for. This is serious stuff. We're going top end here. We're going to spend really big. Well, maybe Martin O'Neill might be more inclined to think, do you know what? It gives me a chance. It's a throwback to the days when he had John Hartson, Chris Sutton, Henrik Larsson. Maybe that would be attractive. But the idea of working like this, on this basis, with that recruitment department, and he's now having to oversee that into the bargain, as well as just keep the season alive. No, I don't think any of it makes sense. And I said last week, I wrote a bit saying that Celtic have become effectively short-term FC. That's what they are. They can't continue like that. It can't go on like that indefinitely. I think Celtic supporters can just about put up with it till the end of this season for the only reason that Martin O'Neill's at the helm and he's breaking his back for them to try and keep it on. But I just don't think you can go into the summer and say, right, well, that's it. Well, more of the same next season. A shoddy recruitment department, Martin O'Neill having to personally go and look at the players that are coming in because they don't trust the structure behind the scenes. And then, another, who's to say, Celtic have never needed a transfer window as badly as they need this summer one. But if they conduct themselves as poorly as they have done in the recent ones, there's no guarantee that Celtic get any better, that this squad gets stronger.